met someone from a different world, so very far away.
Pip pip tally ho, Jules Guides here, in which I wander around London and tell you fascinating facts. Don't forget to watch my other videos and playlists if you want to see lots of other videos about London, and hit the subscribe button or the little bell if you want to be notified. Today we're in Fitzrovia. It's named after Henry Fitzroy, who was the bastard son of King Charles II, and he inherited Tottenham or Tottenham Court, which was a big house down there, sort of around where Warren Street Station is now, from which we get Tottenham Court Road. This was just a country lane back then. If you look at the old maps, there was this sort of long lane leading down to this place called Tottenham. Back as far as the year 1000, it was owned by a guy called William de Tottenham. This over here is the American International Church. They have a soup kitchen and stuff in there, and they also do auditions and things like that.
She seemed to come and go so fast. I miss her to this day.
We're here back here in Good Street, number 37 over the road. That's now where Rhinus is. That's where Culture Club was formed. Boy George formed Culture Club down there in the basement. This is where Reverend William Dodd, in 1777, he was brought down here after being hanged. He was hanged for forgery. He had forged a government bond or something. He was a priest. Called the Macaroni Preacher, this guy. I don't know why he called him Macaroni. It's something to do with his appearance. But in those days, if you're quite wealthy, you could pay someone to steady your body when you were being hanged. So he's hanged up at Tyburn. Oh, wow. To make sure the experience, you weren't swinging in the breeze too much. When you were hanged in those days, you'd actually die of asphyxiation. You wouldn't die from having a broken neck, like in later years. So people used to try and take you down and resuscitate you or revive you. Anyway, this Dodd fellow, he was brought down here to the house of Dr. Hunter, as in the guy who did the Hunterian Museum. And Dr. John Hunter sort of tried to immerse him in a hot bath in order to resuscitate him, but it didn't work. But they dragged him all the way down here, but because he was so popular, it took him 2 hours to get from basically Marble Arch to here. They were just crowded by all these onlookers and fans. But anyway, Dr. John Hunter, he was obsessed with dead people and venereal disease and resuscitating the dead, all sorts of stuff. And it's a pity we're not here at night time. I might have to come back at night because there's loads of bars. Really good place to come for food on your lunch breaks. They got all these street food stalls. Look, pizza from £3.95, and it's decent. I've eaten in there. These houses are still the same as they were in the 18th century. One of the first streets down here was, well, it wasn't called Goodge Place in those days, but a lot of the houses down here are still the same as they were. Is this Lebanese food?
Yes, Lebanese.
Oh, right.
We have our secrets of spices. So we make a combination of spices and herbs mixed with the chicken. So it's something different from anything around.
Like Kentucky Fried Chicken, how they don't give away their secrets of their
we are even better than that.
Oh, everyone's better. Of course you're better.
A smile could melt the frozen heart and light the darkest night. But now she's gone back to her world and turned out the light.
Number 11, the guy who lived here, he was Arthur Seale. He was a member of something called the London Corresponding Society. He used to print pamphlets over in Tottenham Court Road at a printing shop. And the London Corresponding Society was a radical organisation of tradesmen, shopkeepers, merchants, and they wanted universal suffrage. Not anarchistic, but inspired by all the changes that were going on in France at the time, like the revolution and stuff. So William Pitt the Younger opposed it. He even accused this Arthur Seale bloke of a plot to assassinate the king. Around the 1840s, one of these houses had something like 32 occupants, and it was quite famous for having these French prostitutes and bullies, otherwise known as pimps. They were called bullies in those days. Over here on the wall, so these are some famous people who lived in the area. I'm not sure, that looks like George Bernard Shaw. Anyway, no, this guy is Olaudua Equiano. He was born in Nigeria and then sold as a slave, because around the last quarter of the 19th century, Britain was the biggest trader of slaves to America. This guy, he's from Nigeria originally, and then he was sold as a slave age 11. He was then a slave on a Royal Navy ship, and he was a merchant on the side. He managed to buy his freedom for 40 quid, which was in those days 3 years' work for him. He was able to make some money on the side. There's a plaque of his around the corner. He lived quite close by. He went off to be an explorer and a merchant around the world, and he wrote his memoirs called The Interesting Narrative. I was soon put down under the decks, and there I received such a salutation in my nostrils as I had never experienced in my life, so that, with the loathsomeness of the stench and crying together, I became so sick and low that I was not able to eat. I now wished for the last friend, death, to relieve me. But soon, to my grief, 2 of the white men offered me eatables, and on my refusing to eat, one of them held me fast by the hands and laid me across the windlass and tied my feet, while the other flogged me severely. See, at the time, there was about 20,000 black people living in London in the late 1700s. People couldn't believe that this articulate, cultured black man was able to write such an amazing book. And it was one of the most successful books of its time.
She came across to say hello. We stood and talked a while. You should have heard us laugh that day. It still makes me smile.
Oh, hello.
So the Pollock family ran the original shop in Hoxton. It started at 1850. Mr. Pollock died 1930s, and then my grandmother took over the business in the 50s. This building is the oldest building, I think, in the area.
That's good, the Master Detective game. I used to play that. So what kind of stuff do you have in here?
Well, it's mostly Victorian toys. Well, this is the shop we're in. So these are the toy theatres. So these are what the Pollock family produced. They'd be printed in black and white. So you would buy the front, and then you would also buy the play, which comes like this.
Oh wow, how about
This one's
that?
Oliver
Oh,
Twist.
that's so cool.
Look at these. A whole play of Oliver Twist.
That's really cool.
So you'd cut that out.
What year
Fun
would this
though,
have
isn't
been?
it?
Sort of pretty much had its heyday from 1860 to about 1910.
Please, sir, can I have some more? It's like IKEA, flat pack. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
25 quid, your own theatre. It's fantastic. But it's a bit worrying when you enter a place which has stuff that I remember from when I was a young person. Look, I used to have something called the Visible Man.
So these are magic lanterns, and then that's a praxinoscope,
Oh, cool.
which animates
Yeah.
the images when you spin it.
I feel a bit like Alice in Wonderland. It feels like the rooms are getting smaller.
You're having to duck. I think I'll be okay though.
This mouse is quite interesting.
Oh, right, yeah, look, 2000 BC.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So that was a toy.
I'm glad I don't work here. I'll end up with a... Actually, when I'm older, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, now look, teddy bear, 1920.
He's a stife. He's one of the earliest,
He's had better days.
What's this?
oldest known teddy bear.
What, in the world?
Whoa, which one?
Yeah. Well, he was at the time.
You could still give him a cuddle though.
She asked me for just little time, and what little time I had. But it was never long enough, and that makes me sad.
Down to the creepy doll
Oh yeah, I've got to see the creepy doll room.
The creepy doll room.
that everyone says freaks them out.
Okay, you're not wrong. He is terrified. Oh, right, no. So he reminds me a bit of the one in that Anthony Hopkins film. I'm going to have nightmares about this room. I really am.
I didn't know what I had lost, but now it's very plain, because I'll never know the world from where she came.
Oh! Charlotte Street, named after Queen Charlotte, who was the wife of King George III. And all these poets and writers used to hang around here. They actually formed a bit of a group. George Orwell used to drink around here, Virginia Woolf. They became known as the Fitzrovia Bohemians. Nina Hamnet, who was called the Queen of Bohemia, Dylan Thomas, George Bernard Shaw, and a whole host of artists. They all used to meet in this pub, which is why I'm going to go and have a drink now.
Her hair was all the finest silk, perfect blue. And she came from a different world that I never knew.
Julian House, pleasing, of course. But no, that's not what I was going to talk about. Let's talk about the anarchist communist club. Since we are being anarchistic, the Fitzroy Tavern have decided that they don't want me to film in there. God! It was all right for people to film on their phones, apparently. Now, number 6 Windmill Street over there, that was the anarchist communist club Autonomie in 1890, which used to be a collaboration of mostly foreign anarchists from France who became notorious when one member, Marshal Boudin, blew himself up trying to bomb the Greenwich Observatory in 1894. People would come here and they'd plot. Yes, that's what they'd do. They'd plot.
Have a good plot.
In there. We're in Windmill Street, and it's called Windmill Street because there was a windmill there. Later on, it was a factory for manufacturing dentures. They bought those 2 lamps outside. Those are listed, those lamps. They're rather pleasant. I like them. I think they're great. Driving back. Oh, over there!
It's over.
That's my agent. My first ever agent, right, was up there. I don't even know where my agent is anymore. I've got their phone number. They call me occasionally. But anyway, they used to be there. First ever job I got in the acting business was to be a juggler in a Wet, Wet, Wet video called Strange.
Wet,
and
Wet, Wet. Is that a band?
yeah. Haven't you heard of Wet, Wet, Wet?
No.
I'm so old. So I went to this casting down this street here, Percy Street, and they needed a tall, skinny juggler. Turned out I got the job. But yeah, just down there where that nice thing is, that's where I did my casting. See that nice...
You know what that is? Is it art?
It's very fragrant. I'm not sure. Maybe it's this gentleman, I don't know. See that? In 1910, Alois Hitler, right, lived there. Someone called Alois Hitler, whose half-brother was Adolf Hitler. And he came to visit. So Adolf Hitler has been in that building in the run-up to World War One. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Do you reckon they know that?
I'm always mentioning my mum, but you know, speaking of Hitler, my mum is the only person I know who has actually seen Adolf Hitler in real life.
Oh.
In the flesh, she saw him. He came because she's from Turin, and he came to Turin in about 1942, and she would have been 10 years old, and he came past on one of those motorcades doing all his salutes and everything. Quite amazing to think that. It's hard to envisage him in colour, you know, real life, but yeah. This pub here, the Marquis of Granby, Dylan Thomas, who used to drink over that, well, he drank all over here. He used to come here and pick fights with guardsmen who were trying to pick up gay lovers. Rathbone Street, it's very pleasant, but just down here next to the Newman Arms, there's a little passageway which I want to go down. This is the pub where George Orwell used to come here, and he actually based the Proles pub in 1984 on this pub, which, by happy coincidence, used to be a brothel. Excellent. I have drunk in there, it's all right. In the closing credits of Minder, you know they've got that da-da-da-da, boom, ding. Sorry, that's all right. I suppose you don't watch Minder. No, okay. And there's another one of them from over here. So I just like stuff like that. But around the corner here, by the way, that pub over there, the Wheat Sheaf, that's where George Orwell met his wife. Like me, he got fed up with the Fitzroy Tavern. No, he did.
You're not going to let it go.
No, I'm sorry. But no, he got fed up because too many artists and people, it got a bit too cool and trendy for him, and he wanted to go somewhere else. So he used to come here instead. Good for him that he did, because he met his wife. The Bricklayer's Arms, that's the one which used to be a hotbed of anarchists. It used to be called Burglar's Rest after in the 1880s some people broke in and just decided to drink the barn dry. It's funny that doesn't happen more often, actually. Yeah, they just broke some anarchists, probably from the Anarchists Association around the corner. They broke in, just decided to get completely plastered. Rathbone Square down there is actually an improvement on what was there before. It used to be the sorting office. In my other amazing video about the Postal Museum and the mail rail, they had this little mini train that goes underneath the ground. Well, it still does. They've retained the platform underneath. So it went from Mount Pleasant sorting office under here, and there was a sorting office here as well. And then at the end of here, you've got Oxford Street, and across there, Soho Square, which we're not going to.
London streets laid bare before my eyes. It was in one brief moment that love materialize.
Yeah. So I don't particularly want to be hanging around on Oxford Street, literally around the corner. What I love is one of the first and most ancient streets down here is Hanway Street. It's still here. It's named after Jonas Hanway. He, funnily enough, and pleasingly, was one of the first people in London credited with having used an umbrella, and he was ridiculed for doing so, by the way. He walked around town. Can you imagine if you never saw someone with an umbrella before, and he was walking around with this umbrella, and everyone just thought, you blooming idiot. And they ridiculed him. He was quite an eccentric. He tried to popularise wearing stilts. He came up with some weird idea about how, you know, wearing stilts would be a great idea for avoiding stepping in puddles and all the dirt and detritus and the mud that used to get in those days. Anyway, they've ended up naming a street after him. And I quite like it because, look, you see some of these things here. This is not actually, but that's a bollock. This is actually a parish boundary marker. You see? You might have missed that. By the way, I might come back here at night because if you're stuck in London on, I don't know, a Thursday or Friday night and you don't know where to go after hours, after the pub's closed, Troy Bar upstairs, a bit of a disco, downstairs, Sevilla Mia. Fantastic flamenco, live music, it's really great. I'm going to try and come back here, I highly recommend it. It was down here in 1743 that Jack Broughton had his amphitheatre. Jack Broughton was a bare-knuckle fighter, and he introduced some of the first rules of boxing. Well, before the Queensberry rules, it was Jack Broughton's rules, basically. He also invented boxing gloves, only for sparring though, not for fighting in the ring. And he was known to have killed someone in the ring whilst fighting, but he was quite well thought of. He's actually buried in Westminster Abbey. Yeah, if you don't want to go to that Spanish place for live music, there's the other one, Bradley's Bar over here.
Yeah, I've been to that one, yeah.
It's atmospheric and worth a visit, you know.
And then she called to say goodbye. My heart sank to the floor. I know the words I'd left unsaid were lost forevermore.
It's just a few streets over is Berners Street. Now, this was the venue of one of the greatest hoaxes of the 19th century. There was this guy called Theodore Hook, and he was famous for always playing practical jokes on people, and people would actually show up to his club, the Athenaeum, or the Athenaeum, down in Waterloo Place, to see what he was going to do next. He was very popular, and people thought he was very entertaining. He was regarded as the most entertaining man of the age. Anyway, he made a bet to his friend that he could make one house the most famous and talked about house in London in any 1 week. One day, on I think it was the 27th of November 1809, he started writing out all these letters to tradesmen, merchants, politicians, all sorts of people, sort of making arrangements for them to come and be at this house here in Berners Street at a certain time. And then he retired to this house opposite there and just sat there with his mate watching to see what happened that day. Throughout the day, all these delivery men started arriving, delivering beds, furniture, the streets were getting blocked up, police were called, and then eventually the Lord Mayor of London showed up, the Governor of the Bank of England showed up, the Archbishop of Canterbury showed up, and all these people who, because he was quite well connected, they'd written out letters sort of inviting him to parties or saying, oh, by the way, please can you...
The address of the Archbishop of Canterbury to send him a letter.
Well, he had mates who were in high places, so he asked his friends to send these letters, and all these people showed up, and he started to get a bit scared. He thought, oh my God, this has really worked. So he won the bet, but then he scuttled off to the countryside and disappeared for 6 months because everyone's looking for him, but they didn't actually prosecute him. I don't think it was ever proven that it was him, but everyone knew that it was his hoax.
So
the police had to be called. There was almost a riot.
I wish YouTube existed back then. I want to watch this prank video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that story. That's my favourite fact of today.
And on that crowded London street, I found myself alone. I knew it was a different world from the one we'd known. I met someone from a different world.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other videos about London. I've got a plethora of London videos. Check out some of these playlists. And if you enjoy what I do, don't forget to head over to my websites and you can find out more about me, as well as leave a donation or even book me for a private guided tour of London. But above all, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Cheers, Kai. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Down the hatch.